Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining. We'll get started here right at noon in just a minute for our topic today. How should your living trust change once your kids move out of the house? Hooray! So we'll get started here. Just a moment. Let me make sure the screen and everything is all set up. If you do have trouble hearing, feel free to use that dial-in number. It should get you connected right through on a phone line if you have trouble with any of the internet connection stuff. So just dial that in. You won't be able to see the screen, but at least you'll be able to get all the audio, everything that I say, if you watch the video later. All right, well, let's jump right in. So welcome to the web class today. Our topic is how should your living trust once the kids move out of the house? It's going to happen, right? Welcome. My name is Francisco Servent, and I am the attorney and founder of Keystone Law Firm. Our practice is 100% focused on protecting families and their inheritances, and we do that through all stages of life. The specific stage that we're talking about today is empty nesters. So, you know, you've raised the kids, you've gotten them through diapers and through preteens and through teens, and maybe they still feel like they're not really there yet. I know when I was 18, I certainly didn't feel like all of a sudden, poof, 18th birthday, I magically knew all the answers. Kind of the opposite. If some of you had that experience where you turn 18, you think you know all the answers, and you obviously, we know you don't. I'm 41 right now, and I have kids who are 13 and under. 4 kids, my wife and I do, and not at that stage yet. They're starting to maybe get there, at least the older ones. But you remember, I'm sure you remember, and some of you are still going through that right now. It's a new chapter. It can be kind of scary. If you're feeling like, you know what, I'm not sure what this next chapter of life is going to look like. You're still going to have, still happens that I talk to so many families where they're still paying a lot of the bills for the kids who've moved out. Still sleepless nights, obviously. Starting to have some concern about, your own, I don't want to say your own worth, but your own identity. It starts to shift, and if you don't already have fun in something in life, it can kind of feel like your purpose is gone, or it's got to change, and so that's kind of scary. And a lot of my clients, a lot of people I talk to in this stage of life, they're also starting to see their own parents really start to age, that their age is really starting to show. And so we just get worried about, what about my parents who are now in their late 80s, 90s, and, what's going to happen with their life? There's a lot of unknowns. For those of you who have parents that are in their late 80s or 90s. So we're going to talk about all of this because your trust covers everything here. And so we're going to dig in. I'm going to share some things that I've learned along the way and hope you can use some of this. The state bar is pretty strict, though, so I have to do the standard disclaimer. This is not specific legal advice for your situation, okay? This is general information. I hope you learn something. It's education. We don't do private, or we don't do a group question and answers in this format simply because I'll never get through the content that I want to make sure I share with you. But usually what ends up happening is I end up having to draw out more information anyway. And so we do that privately, one-on-one. If you're a client of ours already, you know what that's like to meet one-on-one with our staff, our team. And right now we're doing a lot of those virtually over video calls, kind of like this one. If you've never met with anyone in my firm, then I'll explain what that's like and how people do that, get a one-on-one appointment with us for the first time. We have a pretty nice, simple process. Shouldn't be scary at all if you have questions to get them answered. If you do know me, awesome. I'm glad you're here. I hope this is good for you. I hope you learned something new. If you don't, I always try to brag about my family wherever I can. This is my wife, Nicole, my 4 kids. We just absolutely love the stage of life that we're in. It's just so much fun to watch our kids grow. They're all out of diapers. They're all, they can get their own food. It's just amazing. It's really incredible. And the oldest ones aren't yet, they're close, but they're not yet into that stage of life where they're full on, teenagers, they know things. So they still want to hang out with us a little bit. That's kind of cool. So it's a pretty neat stage of life. Like I said, in our firm, Keystone Law Firm, we do estate planning and asset protection. We've protected, hundreds and hundreds, I think, over, multiple thousands of families have benefited from our services. We've been a top-ranked law firm. I'm a 2-time author. It's just been a lot of fun to be able to do what we do. And so I hope what I share with you today is new, because I don't see other people talking about this and sharing it from this perspective. I don't know why. The biggest problem that I found with people who do what I do and share the information is that they hide the ball on this one big giant problem, in that your estate plan, your will, your trust, all those pieces of it, it's basically never done. And it's a big, giant lie for them to say that, here you go, you're done. Unless you're literally on death's doorbed. And we occasionally get those phone calls where we have to rush out to a hospital. Those are really tough situations. But if it's not that, all of us are planning to live our lives for many, many more years. And the biggest problem that I see with this stuff is that it's not kept up to date. And I think that's not your fault. I think it's just a big misconception that my industry doesn't really make a point of making sure that it's kept up to date. And I think I'm suspicious that the reason for that is because my industry makes so much more money when problems happen, and when probate, people go fighting about the inheritance, they make so much more money. My firm, Keystone Law Firm, about half of our practice actually is helping families who are in the middle of that nightmare. And so far, it hasn't been any of our clients that we've done a plan for. None of ours have ended up in that nightmare. These are people who just call us out of the blue, were referred to us, and they said, hey, my brother's fighting about this, or my mom, is sick, and the kids or not the kids, but, my sister is starting to steal stuff from the house, or whatever. There's a fight brewing, and they call us for help. About half of Keystone Law Firm does that, and I don't want that to be you. I don't want that to be anybody. Thankfully, it hasn't been any of our clients, but so we know what happens there, and it's not necessary. It's totally avoidable. So that's what we're going to talk about, with specific focus on that stage of life right where the kids move out, that empty nest stage. So here's what our outline is going to be. How should your living trust change once the kids move out? Number one, should an 18-year-old have to wait for their inheritance? Okay, we're going to cover that. Who should make your medical decisions now that you've got kids that are adults? And then 3, what if you end up having to take care of your parents? This is a big, big issue for empty nesters, because you're just at that stage of life where parents are getting to that stage of life for them. 18-year-olds don't need a guardian anymore. You may have done a will a long time ago to name guardians for your kids. Good for you. That's something you needed to do in that stage of life. They don't need guardians anymore, right? They're 18. But is an 18-year-old, is a 22-year-old, is a 26-year-old, is a 28-year-old, capable of handling an inheritance? We'll talk about that. Divorce rates are the highest among those that are 25 and under. So that's a big, giant financial mess if it happens. And then, empty nest stage, you're probably 50, close to 60, somewhere in that range. And you're thinking, okay, I've got a few more good years that I can sock money away for retirement. What do I need to do? How do I need to do that? Because you're probably still also trying to pay off some stuff from the kids, or even pay for stuff for the kids, maybe college, maybe the marriages, maybe whatever, right? Helping them out. But then you see your parents and you see, gosh, I wish they were more financially squared away. Are we going to start having to pick up some bills? Are we going to start having to pay some things for them? And that's a big financial drain. So that's what we're going to talk about. So let's dig right in. Number one, should your 18-year-olds wait for their inheritance? So we help families who've had someone pass away. We help them administer their affairs. And we had this guy who called us. Actually, he called us with somebody who was a friend of his dad's. So his dad had passed away. It was a heart attack, one of those, widowmakers, just completely unexpectedly. His dad was divorced, and his mom wasn't really in the picture. And his dad just dropped over dead one day at work. It left him and his sister, who were both in their early 20s. And I'm sure you can imagine, just absolutely, completely unprepared for this. He, with a friend of his dad's, called and came to ask us, what the heck do I do? It was really the friend who was driving the discussion. Dad had a house, dad had all of his personal belongings, furniture, clothing, worked, had a good job, and had employment benefits, had some life insurance, had, 401k plan, had a couple cars actually. I think one of them was an antique. And the son lived here, and the daughter lived in out of state. And so, we're kind of saying, well, you've got to go through probate. We can help you do that. And here's the process. Here's what it'll look like. So we got started. And about 2 months in, probate is typically about a 12 to 20, 1 to 2 years is very, very common. There's just so many timelines that have to pass and things that have to happen the court requires in order for things to be distributed. So typical timeline is 1 to 2 years. About 2 months into it, he was able to collect on a life insurance policy that his dad had, and it paid out to him and his sister equally. They each got about $100,000, I think, out of that. From that moment forward, this is what you're seeing on the screen. This is that picture. These pictures, these are not pictures of them. I just pulled these randomly off the internet. But I can only imagine this had to represent what happened to his life, because he went completely off the rails and completely just lost control of his life. At 18, he was 22 or something, 23. He got 6 figures. He got $100,000 in cash. And that was just part of the inheritance, because we still had to sell the house and the 401k and all the other stuff. But he got that one kind of the fastest, and he just went on a bender. It was really hard. I couldn't control him. Obviously, he's an adult, but he just went completely on a bender, blew through that money, dropped out of college, and it took us about 6 years total to track him down, to get him to do another piece of the process. Then he'd, disappear, track him down month, 6 months, 8 months, just chasing him around to get him to administer his dad's stuff. We never really actually got it all done. We finally had to tell the court we can't find him. And this is the problem with inheriting, money at that age without any guidance or any advice or any oversight. And it just really, I just watched it destroy his life. It was really sad. I have a son who's 13. I have a son who's 8. And I just think about them, I'm trying to raise them with good morals and good values. And I'm a man of faith and trying to, instill my faith into them. But I look back at my life at 18, and if my parents were gone and I got a pile of money, I hope I would have done the right thing. I really do, but I just don't know. And this was a sad example of somebody who it didn't turn out well for him. It's tough though, because what's the magic age, right? We had another case where a guy who was 65 years old, he inherited $200,000 from his mom, and he went straight out and bought a brand new Hummer. Really, that's why his mom lived on Social Security within her means, completely frugal, and he was not financially squared away himself. He was not at all, and he was in his 60s. He was mid-60s. He should have been close to retirement, and instead he goes and buys a Hummer. There's just not a magical age, but and that's why I want to share with you guys this concept of what you can do for those 18-year-olds. There's just too many things in life that can completely derail them. A sudden medical event that just wipes out their finances, a terrible car accident. I think in Arizona, I don't know the total number of car accidents. If you live in Arizona, you know how bad the drivers are around here. But I do know the last time I looked at the statistics, it was 3 people on average every day die in car accidents. 3 people every day die in a car accident. They're out there driving around. They're some of the worst drivers. And then if they do happen to get married, their divorce rates are higher than any other age group. So I just think we really have an obligation to protect them from us giving them the ability to quit their job, drop out of school, be completely lazy. I just do. As a parent, I think we have a moral obligation to protect them from that. Period. I believe that. And I believe the best way to do that is with the backbone of a living trust. A will is just not the way to do that in Arizona. If you want to watch some of our other web classes, we've got some that go into detail about what a trust is and how it works. Generally speaking, it's a private document that you set up. It owns your stuff, but you control it. Your whole life, you control it. It's easy to change. It's very hard for anybody to challenge what you have said are your wishes. It takes the place of a will, and it does basically what you think a will should do. Because the worst thing I think we should do is the traditional way is we just leave an inheritance. It's a pile of cash, right? Even if you did a will, it probably said something like, hey, until they're 18 or 25, don't give it to them outright. But then at that age, poof, they get this big giant windfall. What happens? What happens magically at 25 or even at 30? I don't know that there's a magic, gene that turns on at that age for everybody that says, oh, all of a sudden now I'm a responsible adult. I know what to do with this pile of money. It just doesn't exist. It happens. It happens at different ages for everybody, or it might happen. It might never happen for some. So what I recommend is something that we discovered. I don't know. I probably first heard about this maybe 14 or 15 years ago. It's called a protected trust for beneficiaries, and I just think it's amazing. So you essentially give them their inheritance. You say it's your inheritance, but they can't lose it on accident. Okay, they don't get a big chunk of cash. They don't get, this big, here's 100,000, here's a million, they just don't. It goes into an account for them. So if you had 4 kids, it would be split 4 ways if that's what you wanted. You could say however you want it. Split 4 ways. Each one has their own. Each one does, they don't get a pile of cash. They get a new trust of their own. Okay? And that's why it's called a protected trust, because they get a trust. And then they have that trust that just goes forever, goes for the whole rest of their life. Now they can pull money out, okay, little by little, if they want to do something nice, pay off a mortgage, take their family on vacation, but they don't get big chunks of money, and nobody else can get in there. So if they ever got into a car accident, if they ever were to get divorced, that's not going to get mixed up and split in the divorce. That's going to stay there. If they ever got sued, if they were whatever, any financial trouble, that little bucket stays protected for their whole life. That's what a protected trust is. And that way you give them their inheritance, but you don't give them the ability to stop their own life from being productive. They're going to have to still, get a career and do something with their life. You want to give them enough so they can do the amazing things that they can see, but not so much that they can do nothing. I think that's destructive. And so the protected trust for beneficiaries, that's this first thing. So that's secret. Protect them from their inheritance, okay? That's my first secret, number 1. All right. Switching gears, who should make your medical decisions, right? Now that you've got 18-year-olds or older, right, you've got adult kids, can they and should they make your medical decisions for you? While they were younger, they're not allowed to. So no matter how responsible they are, and how much they might know what you want, they're not allowed to make those medical decisions for you. But once they turn 18, you actually can designate them to have any kind of legal decision-making authority over you that you want. If you give them the authority to do that, then these are the kinds of decisions they're going to be able to make, right? You got to think about it. In an emergency, if you're just in a regular typical surgery and you're unconscious and they need to make a decision, who can visit you if you're in the hospital, or if you're, God forbid, in some kind of rehab or nursing home. If it's a long-term issue like Alzheimer's or dementia, yuck, but they would decide, where are you going to live? Are you going to live in a big facility? Are you going to live in a group home? Are you going to live with them? Are you going to live in your home, all, here in another state? All those things. They would make the decision about whether you can have CPR, whether you would be resuscitated, or the ultimate decision of whether they're going to put a DNR on your medical file, because that's the ultimate medical decision. Is it time to withdraw life support? We had a client who had to make these kinds of decisions for her 22-year-old. He wasn't making the decision for her, but she was having to make the decision for him. He was in the hospital, and the hospital said that he was on life support. His vitals, were gone, and they were saying, we're going to withdraw life support. Unfortunately for her, she didn't have any legal authority for him anymore, right? That's one of the other things. When your kids turn 18, you don't have legal authority to make decisions for them. So she was saying, don't withdraw life support, don't withdraw life support. And they said, you don't have authority to make these decisions. And because he's unconscious, she couldn't get it from him. He couldn't say, yes, my mom can make my decisions. So the only way for her to do it is to go to court. So we actually had to go to court to get an emergency court order for her to be able to tell the hospital, no, don't withdraw life support. We want him on life support. And thank God we did, because she ended up disagreeing with the doctors, moved him to a new hospital, he had some kind of raging infection that was shutting his organs down. They treated it, and over the course of a few days of heavy, heavy treatment, he started to wake back up. So, but that little court venture cost her $15,000-$20,000. So you have to, now that your kids are 18, you've got to be able to make their medical decisions too. So it goes both ways, but are they responsible enough to make your medical decisions? Maybe. And you can assess that, but these are tough decisions. So you've got to really think through that. The types of documents that if you're going to put them on as decision makers, they're going to need a healthcare power of attorney and living will, authorization for release of information. These are created for Homer Simpson because he's my subject. You're going to need an emergency legal agent. You're going to need a general durable power of attorney. All these things are, these are 5 different documents you're going to need. I've got another web class where I go through these in detail and talk about, what they mean, how they work, the problems if you do them wrong. Just how to sign them, just everything. So look for that web class if you want more info on what those are. But those are all of the medical documents and decisions that you would be putting on an 18 or 20 or 22-year-old. So you got to think through, really, is that the right burden you want to put on them? Tough people can make tough decisions. It's completely understandable. And I've helped some people put their young adult children on as that decision maker. But you got to do it with a lot of forethought. It's just, don't make it just an automatic thing. They're 18, I'm giving it to them. What if you have to take care of your parents? Let's switch to our last topic. What if you have to take care of your parents? 2 ways that this goes. You're an empty nester, right? Your kids have moved out, and the reason that I'm bringing this up is because as you kind of march through life and you're thinking about leaving them an inheritance someday, I just have to make sure this is the stage of life. You may need some of that inheritance to pay for your parents. It just gets expensive to have parents in that stage of life. And the statistics just continue to show more and more and more people in their 50s and 60s end up providing not just emotional and physical care for their parents, but financial. A lot of financial resources are provided. And what just becomes devastating is we had a gal who had to come take care of her mom, and she had to quit her job. She had her own life back in the Midwest. She had to move out here to Arizona. At first, it was just, I'm going to come down to Arizona and get my mom squared away, and I can go back. But she ended up having to quit her job after a couple months, and thought, okay, it'll take me just a few more months to get my mom squared away. And after about 6 or 9 months, she decided, okay, I think my mom's squared away enough. I can start thinking about getting a job again. She started to look for a job here. She just knew she would have to be here. And by that point, she was in her mid-60s. Whether you believe it there or not, age discrimination is a thing. And it's just hard when you're in your 60s to get a new job and start a new career path. And that's what she found. She found it was just really hard to get a new job. So she didn't. She ended up retiring, taking some early retirement, and she part-time kind of takes care of mom's business, mom's affairs. I think the latest statistics I saw from research on this is that the average person who has to take care of their parent, like this gal did, ends up losing about $300,000 of income earning potential because of that. It's just a ton of money that is lost during that phase of life. So not only, might you end up actually having to spend money on your parents, but you have the potential of losing your own income. So just be very mindful that this could become one of your biggest risks to your financial security as you kind of step into this part of life. Highly recommend that if you have parents that are in that stage, that you get in there now and start to organize their finances. Clean out the papers. We work with a professional organizer that I highly recommend. She makes this so much easier. This can be it can be a daunting task to go into mom or dad's office and try to clean it up, but you've got to get it to where it looks like that box on the right, where you just know things are here to organized. We're not sifting through, we're not maintaining records from 1973 bank statements. We don't need those anymore. We don't need tax returns from the 80s. We just don't need them anymore. You can get rid of so much stuff that when the emergency happens, it's going to make it so much easier because you've gotten rid of that stuff while mom and dad were here to help you know, what something was. We had this particular gal that I just told you the story of who came to help her mom. We were literally finding documents 5 years later, a scrap of something, an old receipt, an old whatever, and some of them ended up turning into, oh my gosh, this is proof that she has some shares of stock in some weird company somewhere, and it's worth a few $1,000s. Well, we're not just going to throw that in the trash. And her daughter finally, we think, tracked everything down. It took her 5 years to go through the house and the boxes. And I mean, that generation, they kept stuff. So I recommend you try to do it now. And if you can, create one of these verified trust asset reports. Just create a one-page sheet of the financial life that's everything on there. And if they don't have a trust, get them a trust. It's going to make your life so much easier. The last thing you want to do is end up having to file a conservatorship to be able to manage their bills and act as their POA. Okay, Arizona, you've got to be able to have legal authority to take care of it. Getting on their bank account is not good enough because you don't want to get on the house. That's just going to mess up the taxes, and you can't get on their IRAs or their 401k or their pension. You can't. They won't let you. So you've got to have all these documents, these legal documents in place in order to avoid the giant nightmare of a conservatorship. That's this living probate, which I'll tell you about. And make sure you do this. I know it sucks, but sit down with them once a year and go through the checklist. What's the annual review? We've got a checklist if you want. And we do that as part of our client's annual review process. That's how we automatically update our own clients' plans so that as life changes, as you go through these different stages, your own plan, you're not worried about. It's covered. You got to ask about the people, property, and the compliance with the laws. Those are the major categories of things that you need to cover. If an emergency happens and it is not all in place, then living probate, going to probate while your mom or dad is alive, is where the lawyers really make the money. This is where the big bucks happen. If a will doesn't work, that's only after death. But if a power of attorney doesn't work, if a health care directive doesn't work, and the hospital or the bank says, nope, you don't have, something wasn't done right, it's too old, whatever reason, this is where the lawyers make all their money. They make so much money. That's why they don't mind charging $300, $400, $600, $700 to do a will or a trust or whatever, because there's no guarantee that it'll work. And if it doesn't work, your family, you'll go running back to that lawyer to have you fix it. The way they fix it is they make $20, $40, $50, $80, $100,000 by going to court. And that's what, when I said we do the nightmare stuff, that's what it is, right? That's what we see these lawyers make in that probate while you're alive process. So if your parents don't have their stuff in place, this is the wake-up call to get it in place. So the secret number 3 is that your you, the empty nesters, you. Your biggest risk might be your parents. So that's how to take care of that. Now, I'm going to switch gears a little bit because some of you who are watching this have never been clients of Keystone, and totally fine. So I hope this was helpful. I want to share with you how people look at us and what we do. Like, what do we do that's so different? The biggest thing is that I'm not going to do something that I'm not going to do this and then tell you it's not going to work. In all of the fine print of what my industry does, it says this thing has no guarantee to work at some unknown day in the future. Because when do we need, when do you need your will or your trust to work? You don't need it to work today. I mean, we get that. You can't call me and say, hey, I've just had an emergency. Now I need the will or the trust or whatever, right? We all know it has to be done ahead of time. But the problem is we don't know when it's going to be needed. We assume it's going to be needed many, many years and years and years and years into the future. Well, geez, that's just really annoying, isn't it? Because I don't have a crystal ball. What's my life going to look like years and years in the future? If I do it now, it means I'm going to have to change it, and I'm going to have to change it, and I'm going to have to change it, and I'm going to have to spend more money, and it's just there. Nobody wants to do that. So how the industry works is they sell you something for cheap, $300, $500, $600, $800, maybe $1,000 bucks, and we feel good. But then it ends up in probate anyway. Almost all of the nightmare cases where we get a phone call from somebody who is in the horror story, they had a will, they had a trust. It's just old, wasn't kept up to date. And that's par for the course. Is there any liability? No, none. None. There's no liability. So we just we don't do that. Sorry, we just don't. You can if you want. If you want to do that, you just have to be rock solid disciplined to keep it up to date. Go back to them every year, do your checkup. Go back to them every year, do your checkup. Anytime there's a change, go do a checkup. We've just created something that's called our Trust Care program, and we do that for you. So we get it completely squared away, and then we do the checkups. And yeah, that means that this is a relationship that's really going to be long term, because your life's going to change, the laws are going to change, and we've got to match this to those changes. So the first thing is learning something like this. So good job. We usually do these, or we've historically done them in live, in our conference room or, in a classroom or something. But now we're doing them online like this. So you get to stay at home or wherever you are and watch, which is also cool. The next thing is a private one-on-one appointment, which I'll describe in just a second. After that private one-on-one appointment, if it feels good and you're like, yeah, this sounds great, Keystone, you guys look like exactly who I want to work with. You're cool people. You guys know what you're doing. The plan actually makes sense, and let's get started. Then you switch gears and you start the little Lego process of building it one thing at a time. That's the third thing. All of our firm does, all we do is, like I said, this is all we do. And so because it's all we do, we're really good at it. I think we are honestly the best in Arizona at this. And we can do all of this on flat fees. Since we know what we're doing, we've done this thousands of times, it's flat fees because we know what it takes. That's one big red flag for me when a lawyer goes to charge hourly, is that to me means they don't know what it's going to take to fix the problem. And if they don't know what it's going to take, have they done this enough times to be able to do it for you? Now that's not true for some very limited areas where, like if we have, a very ugly horror story where the other side is just being nasty. They are going to create the problems for us. But when it's this, it's a project. We know what we need to do. So we just have everything on packages, and it's flat fees. You get to see what fits your budget and get started where you want to get started. Just like, you're going to a restaurant and picking things off of a menu. Our firm works really, really well with people who want to be a trust care member that are not grumpy cats. We have a strict no curmudgeon policy, and that means we communicate as clearly as we can with you. When we make a mistake, we ask you to forgive us. We're going to fix it. I mean, that's just, we are human. If you are looking for a law firm that always wears black suit and ties and is in a high-rise, mahogany-lined building, that's not who we are. We are very family-oriented. We're very friendly. We're optimistic people. We are very welcoming, and that's who we're looking for in our clients. That's who people refer to us. Those are the professionals we work with when I teach CLEs to other attorneys. And if that's you, you'll fit really well with our team. On the asset side, all of our clients at least own a home and have some money saved up. About $100,000 is usually a good minimum for us. It's going to make sense for you to protect your property, your money, if you have at least that much. Now, what does our first appointment look like? We call it a discovery hour. It's really low key. There's no pressure. We talk, you meet with my client relations manager who will just figure out three things. Okay, let's learn about you individually, your family. If you're married, you both have to come or show up on the video call and just let us get to know you. What are your issues? What are your goals? Second, because we want to know, how do you see this, being accomplished? What do you want to happen for your family, for those you love? And then third, she will take those two and she'll match it up. She'll say, okay, here's your options, A, B, C. And she'll only show you the options that make sense for you. She's not going to go into millions of different things and all kinds of, tax and asset protection and probate laws. And you just, she's not going to bore you with all of that. She's going to whittle it down to what's relevant for you. And then you will have complete clarity about what your family needs. That's the goal of that first appointment. You're not going to learn everything there is to know about estate planning in 1 hour. You're not going to learn everything you need to know about every question you have. You're not going to need to come into that appointment having answered everything before you get there. It's just a 1 hour discovery appointment. You're going to talk about your issues, talk about your goals, learn what your options are. Get clarity about what you should be thinking about, right? Oh, my family should consider A, B, and C. Perfect. Thank you very much. That's what you'll walk out of that meeting with. You'll be whittled down for you so that it's easy. You do walk out of there with some very specific, concrete things of value. The first one is that hour consultation. That hour is really for you, just 100% for you to learn those three things. That value's $500. The second thing is you'll get our personal information book organizer. This is a really cool tool that I've been building and refining over the last 14 or 15 years to help make it easy for clients to capture their financial and estate life and thoughts just down in one quick, simple form. It's hard to do that quickly and easily, but that's what this does. And so we've seen clients, they're like, oh, I get it. It's just this and this and this. They can usually knock that out in about 20 minutes. The third thing is the myths of financial security. So we care about our clients from a whole big perspective, from your whole life perspective. And so that's what this third piece is. Huge value there, $500. So many people just get taken advantage of by annuity salesmen out there and stockbrokers and people who claim to be financial advisors. That industry is just full of so many shysters. I want you to know really behind the scenes how all that stuff works with investments and the stock market and IRAs. And then, what about your tax planning? Are you thinking about your tax situation as you're heading into retirement? Because if you aren't, you're going to end up wasting 30% of your retirement assets. Just poof. So the myths of financial security is what to learn about from the tax side. So you don't need to wonder. It'll tell you how the stockbrokers and the annuity people, how they make money, so that you can make a better decision about whether that's right for you or not. And really gives you some good criteria on here's how you can safely invest your life savings without any worry about the stock market roller coaster. So that's the myths of financial security. And then our successor trustee handbook. This is a awesome handbook for your successor trustee, so they know what to do when they have to take over that job. And then my book, one of my books, Pack Your Parachute. Happy to give you that as my gift to you so that you're just armed. In there, I cover 12 more topics in more detail, so you're just armed with as much information as you want, so you can really make the best decisions for your family. Total value over $1,400 just in that first appointment with my office. Like I said, it's really no pressure. My client relationship manager just makes it comfortable, easy. You just ask your questions. She'll give you the answers and point you to the next steps if that's what you want to do. Our office does charge $125 for that because we commit obviously a lot of time and resources and our staff to that. And so we want you to make that commitment to us. That is applied to any services that you hire or ask us to do, so you get credit for that. And we do give 100% money back guarantee, even just on that first hour. So if you sit down that discovery appointment and you're like, man, this was a total waste of my time, which I can't imagine it would be, but if it is, you get a refund. No, total, my commitment, refund for you, and you walk out with all the value of it. You just let my office know if you'd like a refund. But right now, through this pandemic and stuff, my staff is like, Francisco, make it easier. So we've dropped the price. It's $75. That's the price right now of the Discovery Hour. All the same, huge value. Everything there is yours. And I invite you, if this felt like some good information, and you're just ready. You don't want to wait another minute. You don't want to wonder, if your family really has things in order, or my gosh, are you rolling the dice and you're going to end up being one of those horror stories. If you just don't want to wonder about that anymore and you want to make sure this is taken care of, this is a good first step to investigate Keystone and see if we're the right fit for you. The way to do that is jump on this link, bit.ly/Keystone appointment. And the whole process is right there online. Just find a time that looks good, book it, and my staff will confirm everything for you. There's really not much you have to prepare for it. We'll send you some information so you can be aware of what to expect, but you don't need to gather your whole financial life. You don't need to make all your decisions before you come into this first appointment. It's just a first appointment. Just show up, open mind to learn, open mind to share information, and see how it feels for you. Otherwise, I hope this was important, or this was helpful for you. If you already are a client of Keystone, you don't need to schedule through that. That's for brand new clients. You get to skip some of the process. If you need to make some updates, give our office a call. Let them know that you heard this and you need to make some updates, and they'll get you right in. And we'd love to help you do that. That's it, everybody. Stay safe out there. Have a great rest of your day.